have concerns about your personal information being exposed online? Information such as your home address, date of birth, voting preferences, and more readily available with one search. DataSeal is the comprehensive data removal service I trust. I use it. So use the link below to receive 5% off of your DataSeal subscription and protect your family. Okay, so today we're going to talk to Bill Noguera, who's on San Quentin's Death Row and has been for the past 40 years, about the yard and about prison life and what it's like to be on death row. And he's going to explain to you a little bit about what he looks for. So, Bill, when somebody's sentenced, basically, either is sentenced to death, you have choices in that prison. You can become a part of the problem, or you can try to become a part of the solution. And for me, I think Bill has tried to become part of the solution. Now, I'm not here to advocate for Bill or anything like that. Excuse me, I don't know him well enough. It takes me a long time before I can get comfortable with somebody. But what he has shown is that he is trying to better himself and in the same token help others. And how he's doing that, he's running classes in the prison. He got his bachelor's degree from what I understand. And of course, he's helping me try to look at cases that are unsolved and give me, his opinion on things. Because, in fact, Bill has, committed the act of murder. So, but he studies people. And I used to do this a lot before I became a cop. I used to go to the mall. Remember when the mall was a big thing? I would go to the mall and just sit and observe people. Kind of creepy if you think about it in a way. But it helped me with an understanding of human nature. And that's what I wanted. I just wanted to observe how people acted. Who was looking at who? Were the security guards that were there actually doing their job? Or were they ogling the clerks and the customers? Things like that. When I was in college, I did that for some papers that I had to write. Bill is doing that for the past 40 years on death row. And he'll explain to you, I'm sure, about what he does and what cues he sees before something's going to happen. He'll also talk about his dealings with serial murderers and, what he thinks of them and getting inside their brain. He's chosen to do this. And I'm appreciative of it because it helps me in my research and my studies. So let's take a listen to what Bill Noguera has to say. All right, we're back with Bill Noguera. We're going to talk more about his life in San Quentin Death Row and why he does what he does and what he looks for out on the yard and in San Quentin on death row. So, Bill, go ahead and take it away and tell the audience what you want to tell them.
Yeah, well, the yard situation seems to be something people are very interested in because it is a concrete jungle. That's actually what I call it, the concrete jungle. And, it's when you walk out to these yards, you're cuffed up behind your back. You go into a sally port, and the door opens up, and then you step out. Once you step out, at least when I step out, my antenna goes up. And what that means is I'm immediately very aware of everyone on that yard. Now, as I've said before, I'm a student of human behavior. I don't have a regular degree from a university, but I have a PhD from the University of San Quentin State Prison. And what that means is that I'm intimate with everyone's habits, traits, etc. on that yard. The reason for that is because my life depends on it. So let me explain a little bit. These yards are usually made up.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Of large groups. There are the Hispanics, there are blacks, there are whites, there are Asians. Now, normally I walk out and I immediately put my cup down and then I turn on and I start watching everybody. Are the whites doing what they're supposed to be doing? They normally sit down, they talk, they go over what they're going to do that day. The Mexicans or Hispanics are usually working out already. The blacks are by the tables. So those are normal behaviors. If they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, then I look at the group that's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I look for other cues. A big one, and one of the biggest ones, and you'll be surprised to hear this, is coffee. If a group is going to do something violent, usually they don't make their coffee. So I watch for that. But that isn't everything. It could be something, maybe the guy's going to a visit or something. If I can't discern what's going on by then I start looking at individuals. What does Ricky normally do at this time in the morning? If he's doing what he's supposed to do, that tells me that maybe his group's not involved. But if he's not, then I look at the next cue. Is Bobby doing what he's supposed to be doing? And it's a list that I go down, and this happens in seconds. I'm looking and deciphering what's going on. Now, that's a normal situation. Now, as I said, the yard is normal. Nothing's going on. I set up, I start working out. But usually, and people that have been at war, in a trench with other men will tell you this is true. You can usually smell the adrenaline of males when they're about to do something. And this isn't crazy. We're all animals. The only difference is we have the ability to reason that other animals don't. And we've shied away from all the primal instincts, which is to observe habits. Animals do it all the time. It's called instinct. We've let it go. We put perfume on, we do all these things in normal society. But in prison, it's what saves your life. On a number of occasions, I've been out in the yard, Ken, and suddenly I feel it. A tension. You can almost taste it in the air. And then I go through my litany of questions. I look at everybody, what they're doing. Some guys are so good that they can shield their emotions where I can't see it. To the last second, they drop them, and then immediately they become who they're going to do, what they're going to do that day. And it just happened, we're talking about this, it just happened the other day. I'm on the yard. It's a normal day. Nothing is happening. People are playing basketball. But suddenly, that tingling goes on, and I look up. And I look from each person, and within 30 seconds, I know who's involved. I know who he is, and sure enough, I look to his head, and now he's produced an 8-inch bone crusher, which is a prison-made shank made out of steel. He has it in his hand, and he's walking towards a guy. He's 15 feet from me. And I can see him first looking, is it me he's coming after? But I've watched these guys stalk, and I'm looking at the entire year, because this happens in seconds. This isn't a minute, 2 minutes, it's seconds. And I'm trying to make sure I'm not being set up, because if something is happening, something else can be going on that no one knows about. And that's what happened today. The guy goes to another guy, and suddenly he begins to stab this guy. The guy is shocked. He doesn't know what's going on because his back was turned to the yard, and he wasn't paying attention. While all the police and everybody are focused on the guy stabbing the guy in the yard, and the gunners are firing into him, I suddenly realize something else is going on. I begin to look again, and sure enough, to my left, there's another guy, and he's already being stabbed to death. And the gunners don't see it. It was basically to take their focus off of what was supposed to happen. It happens all the time in prison, and that's why I'm such a student of human behavior. And I have a unique set of tools which allows me to see things that people don't look. It's observation. It's being so observant because I know, ultimately, my life depends on it.
Did that stabbing just happen, Bill, that you explained?
Yeah, it just happened a couple weeks ago. Remember, we were talking, and I said, hey, they're searching us. It was a couple days before that. It happened. Oh. Sure. And here's another one for you, Ken. You know the reason I couldn't call you last Friday and Saturday? Because they locked us down. Why? Because these guys went to church. They were in church in front of a priest, and they stabbed another guy there. Wow. So when I tell you this is the most dangerous prison in the nation, I mean exactly that. There is no halfway mark here. These guys come to kill you. And I have survived all these years because I'm usually ahead of them a little bit. I'm not a month ahead of them. I'm seconds ahead, giving me enough time to prepare to try and defend that attack.
Has anyone been there longer than you?
Oh, there's been a couple guys, but they've lost their minds. The majority of guys that have been here as long as I have lost their minds. They're in wheelchairs. They're they're just completely gone. They've abused drugs for years. They just lost their minds.
So they're
But
elderly.
there are a few.
Elderly folks?
Well, some of them. I got here. I was the youngest guy when I got here. I was on death row. I was only. My crime happened when I was 18 years old. So I was the youngest guy here. So, of course, I'm not as old as other guys. Those other guys got arrested when they're 30, 35 years old. So now they're 80, 85 years old.
I see.
But, yeah, the truth of the matter is I'm one of the guys that have been here the longest. I mean, there's been other people. When I got here, I was the 242nd guy sentenced to death in California since 1978. And most of those guys before me are either dead, they've committed suicide, they've died of old age, they've been killed here. It's just a litany of different things that happen. But I've stayed focused, I've stayed healthy, my mind is intact because for me this is a job. This is something I do every single day. And I've mentioned before, every time I leave my cell and they put those cuffs on me to take me to that yard where I know it's a jungle, I tap the door above my cell door and I say, today they'll try and kill me. And I leave my cell with that frame of mind. And it isn't until I return to that cell and they lock the door behind me and I'm safe that I relax.
And you've been doing that for 40 years.
I've been doing it for 40 years and I'm probably going to do it for a lot longer than that.
Well, speaking of the stabbing that you witnessed, have you ever been a victim of that, an assault?
Absolutely. I have fended off numerous guys that have come after me with a knife in their hand intending to kill me. Yes, it's happened a number of times.
Wow. Well, that in itself is pretty shocking. My audience, a lot of them, most of them can't imagine being in a fight or flight situation such as that. Can you explain how that happens? You don't have to go in detail about what started it, but the fight or flight situation that you get yourself in?
Sure. Well, I don't mind being candid about what happened. Usually in prison, it's politics, gang affiliation, and things like that. And if you're not involved with a gang, if you're strong enough to stand on your own, usually they test you. When I first got here, I was tested immediately because I did not join a gang. I did not get involved with those type of things. And I made it very clear to people. And I didn't do it in a manner which, I said, hey guys, look, I don't want to, I didn't say it like that because you can't. When they immediately approached me because they saw the type of guy I am, the kind of physical shape I'm in, they immediately wanted to recruit me. And I made it very clear. I said, hey, and not the nicest terms either. I tell them, listen, I respect your rules, respect mine. The first guy that asks me to do something or attempts to do something to me, I'm going to smash him. I'm not making any bones of this. This is exactly what's going to happen. So either you respect me, and I'll respect you, but
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
But I'm not getting involved. And I made that clear from the very day I stepped onto San Quentin. And of course, they tested me. They wanted to know, okay, are the rumors real? Is this guy who he says he is? Can he stand on his own? Can we knock him down? All those questions were answered very quickly the first time someone attempted to do it. And they've tried a number of times. And each time the result has been the same. Look, I'm not a tough guy. I'm not, some guy that looks for trouble. I try to avoid it at all costs. And when I hold these classes in the yard about rehabilitation, about second chances, about owning responsibility for your crimes, people don't like that. There are men here that really are upset about it because I'm taking away recruits from these guys. Because I'm teaching them there's another way to be better. And they don't like it. And I'm sure that question crosses their mind all the time. Should we take them out today? Should we try? I always make it abundantly clear that nothing's changed in the 40 years I've been in prison. I will defend myself. I will defend my position. And if you try and harm me, well, the results are always the same.
So, while you've been there for 40 years, can we talk I know you've talked about this before, but just a little bit, can you shine some light on these serial offenders that you have watched? And one of the things that you explained is, you see them at a table playing cards, swapping serial killer cards and stories and stuff like that. My audience, they can't believe that. So can you shine some light on that?
Well, sure. The serial killers, as I've talked about, are not going to change. They are who they are. That's who they are by nature. I know there's a lot of people are going to say, well, no, it's more nurture rather than nature. Look, I understand where you guys get that from. I understand that a lot of psychologists say it's true. Well, if it wasn't, they wouldn't have a job. I'm not getting paid for all this stuff. I have observed these men. I've talked to these men. I've shared stories purposely to get them to talk. And they giggle. They laugh. They get very aroused. And they get very excited talking about the killings and what it did for them. And to further that, they have these clubs. They swap little cards. They actually have cards of themselves. It's a picture of themselves. And the back of the card is no different than a baseball card. It says John Blow, whatever, and it says how many kills, how he killed, was it rape, strangulation, etc. And below it has the victims' names. Some of them, they have so many victims, you can't put it all on one card.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
They have their signature on it, and they swap these cards. Hell, I have a card. Okay? They're going to be shown the book that I wrote through the lens of a monster. I've been able to acquire one, which is almost unheard of because these guys keep their stuff very close, and they only share it with other serial killers. But of course, I'm wearing a mask out there, Ken. I talk to them. They know who I am. And I basically explained to them that I'm not who they see. I've done other things, and that intrigues them. So I get them to talk to me.
Interesting.
Let me call you back.
Okay.
All right, Ken.
So very interesting thoughts on some serial killing observations. Do you have anything else to add to that? How are they treated out on the yard? Are they with their own little crew? They ain't got nothing to worry about because they're in protective custody, or is that different?
Yeah, they're in protective custody, so they have really not a lot to worry about unless they personally assault somebody or personally disrespect somebody that does something to them. But they're on a protective custody yard. On death row in East Block, it's yard 4 and yard 7. Now, as I mentioned before, I was assigned to yard 7 as an IGAP worker where the serial killers are at because the warden needed someone to care for them. I took classes for CPR, for caring of the elderly, and once I got my certificate, they placed me out there to care for them. And that's how I got really the inside scoop because I was among them. And that gave me an advantage. Normally, I go to a normal yard 6. I was on yard 1 before that. And these are huge yards with a lot of killers. And look, I'll tell you how things can be on the death row, how they change so quickly. On yard 4, one of the serial killers, is Charles Ning, the guy who killed all those people, including throwing a baby in a microwave. He was out there one day, and they made a mistake. They opened the wrong gate. And a regular convict from yard 3 stepped out onto yard 4. Within 2 seconds, he had rushed across the yard, got Charles Ng, and stabbed him twice. That's how much convicts hate serial killers. They will do anything they can, and if they get a chance, they will try and kill them. I, of course, don't believe that because I'm not here to do anybody's job. I was placed in that yard because I wanted to do a job, which was to care of the elderly. Now, prison politics and prison behavior dictates that I immediately attack them. But I've never followed prison behavior. And of course, I know the questions in your head and the audience is, how much danger does that put me in? Well, doing your show, Ken, your former law enforcement, former investigator, all those things, because I'm dealing with you, because I'm talking with you, because I'm sharing with you and with your audience, that put a target on my chest the first day I came on your show.
Well, I don't know what to say about that. I just was, if you could have seen me right there, I was shaking my head. I was just thinking, man, that is a a heavy burden, not for just you, but for me as well. But let me talk about the serial offenders. They're in protective custody. So the only way people they have to fear really is themselves. Is that even an option? I mean, will serial killers attack other serial killers out on the yard, or is it they just get along?
No, most serial killers, and I'm sorry about that microphone.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
There's not a whole lot I can do with the microphone today, but serial killers, for the most part, in prison, are probably the most well-behaved people. They don't get in trouble. They don't attack anybody because, like I said, they only attack when they're the person in charge. For the most part, they're cowards. They're not going to do anything, and everybody knows this. They are sexual deviants. They are people with these psychological issues that need gratification. That gratification is not enclosed in what you would think a convict would do, or they don't have those needs. These predators are only insects. They're predators to people they can completely dominate, that they can go into a house at night, rape, pillage, whatever. They're not going to do that in prison, because in prison, there's a whole different the food chain is totally different. They're at the very bottom of the food chain. Serial killers, child molesters, rapists, that's all one bottom sludge pool.
But they do seem to get along with each other, or are there some just like in regular society where they're kind of standoffish, they don't talk to anybody? But the way I'm hearing it described from you is almost like it's like a picnic for them. They can just all sit around at the table and shoot the shit.
Yeah, for the most part. There's a couple of them that don't talk to other ones. They don't like to associate. They think themselves to be better than them.
Can you name any of them?
But for the most, sure. Joseph Nace was one. He doesn't speak to anybody.
Okay.
He calls other serial killers morons, idiots, and he thinks he's superior to all of them. There's also Randy Kraft, the scorecard killer. He doesn't talk to many people. I've talked to him. He was my neighbor for a number of years, and it took me a decade and a half to get him to talk to me. But most people don't talk. And when I mean talk, I mean share. I mean tell me things about himself. Sure, he said hello for the first decade, but it took a while for him to start speaking to me. Of course, now that the cat is out of the bag, they know who I am now, or at least they will pretty soon. If any of their followers or friends tell them, hey, there's a guy named Bill Noguera, he's giving up all your secrets on the internet. So, hey, the cat is out of the bag. And that's okay. I've learned enough and I know enough that I can play their game as well or better than they, and that helps the public. That helps society. That's why I always end my episodes of Death Row Diaries with, be safe. Be aware of your surroundings. Your life can depend on it. And I mean exactly that. Because, I'm sorry, just give me a moment. This guy's just loves that microphone. Yeah, he's also a derelict. Okay, so if you go to a water hole in the Serengeti and you see a bunch of deer drinking, if you're observant enough, you're going to find a predator somewhere in that vicinity. Now, I don't want to say this to scare you or scare the audience, but I'm willing to bet money that if you go to any schoolyard, ages 5 to, say, 12 years of age, this is a normal day, put me out there, and within 15 minutes or less, I'll find you at least 2 predators that live or are around that area looking at those kids that day. How do I know this? You're like, this is pure speculation. No. I've talked to enough pedophiles, which makes my skin crawl, but I did it for research, I did it to investigate, and they would tell me how they would sit for weeks, a block, 2 blocks from the school, looking at bus stops, looking at different places where kids are, the local eatery, the ice cream parlor, anywhere kids are at, and they were close, watching kids, picking kids out, fantasizing, stalking. That's when I say, be aware of your surroundings. That means for kids, for women, for men. You have to be aware. And I don't mean for you to stay home, not to go out to dinner. Have a life. always be aware of your surroundings. There are predators around you, and it takes the right person to see them.
I want to ask you a quick question about sex trafficking, specifically as it relates to children. I'm working a case right now of an 11-year-old boy named Mark Heimball, who I believe was sex trafficked from New Jersey in 1991. Do you have any dealings or any familiarities with that at all? Not the case in particular, but the selling, the kidnapping of kids?
Well, there's a lot of guys here that kidnap children. Most of them are serial killers. They kidnap to kill or to sexually abuse. So I have a very good insight of what they do and why they do it. I don't know that particular case, but most of the cases I've dealt with are men who have used children and then killed them.
Right. You don't know anything about the actual selling of kids to like pedophile rings or anything like that?
I do not. That's something that's a little bit outside of my realm of expertise. But let me say this, it does exist because some of these serial killers here dabbed in pornography, in child abduction, child trafficking before they took the step to become serial killers.
Right.
If a child is abducted into those type of rings, and you said 1991, 1993, that child is probably long gone.
Sure. No, I have no doubt about that, and it's an area where I'm not too astute, but I want to know more about that area of sex trafficking and kids and stuff. So I just thought I'd throw it out there before you go back to talking about your experiences on death row.
Well, I do think it's important that parents, specifically parents of children, to always be hyper aware and a little paranoid, because it only takes a second to grab a child. We saw the case with America's Most Wanted, John Walsh, how quickly his son was abducted. It can happen to any child from any home. Doesn't matter of race, gender. It can happen. Watch your children. There are men out there. There are people out there that mean them harm, and you have to watch your children. It's just, they're a commodity out there. I know it sounds horrible, but that's what these guys look at them as. And I can tell you, there would be no way in the world that I would allow a child of mine to go into school and I'm not at the school to pick him up and to leave him there. And probably I'd stop by 10 times a day. They'll probably think, who is this crazy guy watching his kid all day? Well, unfortunately, I know what these guys think, and that's why I'm the way that I am.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are like that. If it's out of sight, it's out of mind. You know what I mean? They don't think about it. It's a horrible analogy, but I would equate it to people that eat meat. They love going to the grocery store and getting their beef and their chicken, but they don't want to know how it's obtained and the killing that it takes to get that. It's out of sight, out of mind. And I think that some way is the same with these child molesters who you have come into contact with, you have talked to, you have seen how they act and how they think, and for you it's probably tenfold worse than somebody out here that has never talked to one that they know of.
Yeah, because I do know where it comes from, how they do it, and everything else. And that's look, it's not a pleasant thing to have the knowledge that I have, but better me to go through that than someone else. I'm just here to give the information, so hopefully, it saves a child's life, or a parent becomes so vigilant that a perpetrator or pedophile can't get near their child.
All right, sounds good. I don't have anything else written down here that I wanted to ask you. Is there anything else that you want to go through that I didn't cover?
Well, only that, things are changing for me. As I've mentioned, I'm going to be sentenced to a lesser sentence pretty soon, and if folks would like to know what's going on with me, they can go to my website, artistwilliamnoguera.com, and sign up for the newsletter. I put out a newsletter about weekly that my publisher puts out, letting you know what I'm doing and what's coming out, when the book's going to come out, things of that sort, and really what I'm doing. So that's out there, and that's about it, Ken. Anything else, I'll be glad to call you back, and we can talk about that as well.
Does people want to know? I think they want to know how you have access to website and books and paintings and all these things that you seem to have on death row. Some of these guys can't understand that, and you explained it a little bit before. But can you just explain it again? How you become the other death row inmates have all this access, and are they writing books and doing artistry and having web pages?
Well, look, everybody has the freedom. This is America. We have the freedom to do whatever we want. I've just taken the time to write a lot of people. It didn't happen overnight. I've been here for 40 years, and I started in 1993 with a website called The Surfing Monkey, Dead Man Drawing. And I started showing my skills as an artist there. And networking. I spoke to different people. I've queried a number of different agents. I've had a number of literary agents, a number of art dealers. And it's basically just networking. I write letters, and we don't have access to the internet, so I just keep writing letters, and people receive them. They like what I have to say. Then they ask for a book proposal. I send them a book proposal. But I also have a team. I have Dr. Alice, and I have a number of different people that step in. I have a publisher, and it's based on my work. They see what I can do. And look, the truth of the matter is, they're not going to talk to you unless they think that you're legitimate and you have something that's worth something.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
And that's really what I do. That's how I've been able to. The website, I obviously have a web designer. I wrote a person, asked them if we can barter for one of my paintings. He said, absolutely. And now I have a web designer named Bjorn Wallman. He's the founder and owner of Once Interactive. So it's just a matter of reaching out to people, showing them what you can do, and then believing in you.
And for me, the bottom line is...
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Before we get cut off, the bottom line is you're doing all this because you chose to make your life better while you're in there and do the things that you want to do while you're in there.
Absolutely.
That's
yeah.
right.
Like when we reached out to you, it was no different. You could have said, hey, no, bye, buddy.
Right.
But you gave me a shot, and here I am. And let me call you right back. It's going to cut off.
Okay.
Hi, Ken.
Okay, so we're back on here. I mismanaged my time. I thought we were up, but it seems like we probably got 15 more minutes. Am I right?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of cover some of the things you were asking about. And one of the things that you have to understand, and the audience should understand, it wasn't a fly-by-night thing. I didn't get a bright idea that just, hey, I'm going to do art, and the next day I'm up and running. It took decades to really get myself going because, you have to prove yourself. The podcast, I had to call a number of people, show my idea that I wanted to be a producer. And I got Matt Ralston. He said, yeah, let's do this. We did Death Row Diaries. And with you, he contacted you. And it's just networking. And word starts to spread. Hey, this guy Noguera, he's not an idiot. Or he is an idiot. Whatever people think. It's just a matter of really just knocking on people's door. And those who want to better themselves or better other people's lives, and they're passionate about it, I think will be able to do it. How many detectives have retired and said the hell of the world and walked away? You have continued because you feel you have a duty to society to help, to inform, to investigate. I think that's the difference of those who do and those who don't.
Well, yeah, and I had just talked about this in a video yesterday about McDonald's workers and how they are looked down upon, and janitors and all these so-called menial jobs. But you know what? They're the people that I respect the most because they're working. They are taking the time to better their lives by getting up every morning when they could just lay in bed and say, I'm going to live with mommy and daddy. But no, they get up, they put their boots on, and they go to work, and they're not lazy. And I equate that to you as you chose to do all these things while you're in there. You could have easily said, you know what, I'm just going to take drugs, lay on my bed, and just, wilt away. But you chose different, and I respect that. And I wanted people to know that going forward.
Well, I appreciate that. And there's the other side of the coin. I could have been the same guy I am now, but used it for bad. I could have become a gang member. I could have been hurting people in here. Look, Let's not lie about it. Let's be candid. I have all the tools to do that. I chose to use the tools for what you said. Get up and work and try and better. Look, it never escapes my mind, Ken. I have a debt to pay. And if there's one thing that I always do is I always pay my debts. I owe one to society. I owe one to your audience. I owe one to you. And that's why I'm here. Otherwise, I would use all these tools I have for bad. And that would not be a good thing.
Right.
I made a decision years ago, and I'm sticking by my guns.
Yeah, and I always say in every episode that we do, you make no bones about the wrong that you did. You don't deny it, you don't make excuses for it, and you live up to it. And somebody that does that, they're okay in my book.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Hey, not everybody can do that. There's a lot of people in this world that want to make excuses. It's a special person that can say, you know what, there's no excuses. I did this, this, and this, but I'm going to do A, B, and C to try to correct it and go forward and pay my debt. And I believe that's what you're trying to do and have been trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right.
All right. Well, anything else you want to add again before we go? Is there anything you want to talk about the yard, behaviors, cues that you see? I was very intrigued about the coffee aspect of it and then not getting coffee when something's going to happen. Any other clues like that you can share?
Well, it's really feeling, and I always go back to the analogy of a beat cop. A beat cop walks, I'm not sure they do it anymore, but they used to when I was out. They'd walk neighborhoods, and they knew those neighborhoods, and they can tell by little things that people do that something is wrong, something's not absolutely right, and that's what I do in those yards. Being intimate with people's habits saves people's lives, and coffee is just one of the things. People always roll their eyes at that, but it's so true. These guys don't make coffee when they're about to do something because they don't want to waste the coffee. It's almost instinctive. Why make coffee when you're concentrating on something else? And then sometimes, even in that same little group, you'll notice guys that don't, and they're acting different. They're wearing state clothes rather than their personal clothes. They're wearing state boots instead of their regular shoes. But other guys in the same group are making coffee. That also tells you something. It doesn't tell you the whole picture. It gives you a piece. In some cases, like it was in the case of a few weeks ago, they were going to victimize one of their own. And I picked up on that the guys who hadn't made coffee were the ones that were going to do it. And the ones who had made coffee and were running around doing nothing different were going to be the victims. And that's exactly what happened. And as I said, it's a small piece of the picture. But when you start seeing more and more cues, you get a better picture of the entire yard and you know what's going to happen. And that's basically what it is that I do. It's just observational skills that I learned from a child. My father.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
My father was my first subject, and then it went to neighborhood gangs, neighborhood individuals, and from there it just continued to where I'm at now, where I can basically read a yard like a book.
Well, I want to talk quickly about what you said there about noticing the coffee and relate it to something that happened with me. Because when I was working undercover, I was went to buy, I think an 8-ball of Coke from a dealer and a couple people. And it all went down okay, but it was a last minute thing. And so I didn't wear sneakers. And instead I wore my police patrol boots because that is what I had in my locker at the time. But I had my jeans pulled down over it so you couldn't see much. But anyhow, we ended up arresting the guy. He tried to run. My partner tackled him. We got him. We got our buy money. We got the drugs. Went back there. And I'm talking to him. And he looked at me and said, I should have known better. I knew you were a cop. And I said, how did you know? Because I want to know so I don't get killed the next time I'm out. And he said, your boots, they were too shiny. And right then, it learned something. You know, he knew. He was a criminal. He knew something was off. But yet he was greedy. And he continued to then go with his gut instinct.
Exactly, and that's one of the things I always talk about. Now let's go full circle. A woman gets out of work. She opens up the door to the back. It's dark outside. Her car's in the parking lot. Every instinct in her is yelling, "Don't go out there!" And she overrides it, thinking, "I'm a 21st century woman. I'm not afraid. No one's going to touch me." And she goes out there, or a man or a child, and you get nailed. Those instincts are there for a reason. That drug dealer saw your boots. Drug addicts don't shine boots because they're worried about getting drugs. That should have told them immediately you're a cop or someone you weren't supposed to be. Those little cues are a pretty good example of the little pictures I see here, and I put the picture together very quickly because if you take too long, you could get killed.
Very good insights. All right, I'm going to end it there, Bill. Do you have anything else before we go?
No, that's it. Just please be safe, be aware of your surroundings. Your life could depend on it. Okay,
End it now. So, there you have it. Bill Noguera, Death Row Prison. A lot of insight there, especially about the coffee. It's great insight, from somebody that's been there and observing, and, the brutality that's in San Quentin and having to always watch your back. I mean, I couldn't imagine, but, that's the life he lives. He made a decision, a haphazard decision at one point when he was 18 years old to get him where he is today, 40 years on death row. Whether you believe in that, the death penalty, or believe in, it's just, to me, and I've said this before, I've seen people get out of jail for killing preteen girls and get out of jail, in 10 years. And then you have other people, killing is not just killing. There's circumstances. Now, I am not taking up for what Bill did by any means. I'm talking overall in general. The justice system isn't right. There's people that have delivered marijuana, granted, probably large sums of it, that are doing more jail time right now than I know a murderer who murdered a 12-year-old girl, choked her out with his own hands, and left her in a cornfield. He did 10 years. So that's what I'm saying. It's not fair, and I don't know how to correct it. But there's people smarter than me that do know how and wield the power to do it. So let's get on that. Otherwise, brilliant commentary, I feel, from Bill Noguera, and I learned from it. And that's what you got to take from these. Learn something from it. If you don't, and you don't like it, don't listen to it. But if you go in with an open mind and can listen and take something from it, let it be a teachable moment for you, I think you're better off. And that's what I did today. So I'm appreciative of Bill taking his time and sharing it with me today and sharing it with you. So hope you like this episode of Redemption from Death Row. Until next time, mate. Mains out.